everybody. This is my presentation on globalization and how it affects human behavior in psychology. My name is Kyle Brugge. Let's get right into this. So, to start off, let's define the key term. What is globalization? Globalization can be defined as the process of interaction and integration among people, companies, and governments worldwide that occurs mainly through immigration, otherwise known as westernization, due to how often values from European countries are integrated into other societies. So globalization has increased due to the rise of communication and transportation technologies such as boats, airplanes, emails, and cellular devices. Well, so how does it affect human behavior? Western values are known to be more individualistic, so when applied to collectivistic cultures, it will have negative side effects. Westernization loosens relationship ties by creating a competitive nature where winning is a big value. Of course, with winning there are losers, which reasons why friendship bonds are easily broken. So, when westernization is introduced to a traditional culture, there are two responses: integrative and exclusionary response. The first response, integrative culture response, happens when Western values and traditions are welcomed, and the traditional culture tries to merge the Western values and beliefs with its own, and may even drop some traditional values altogether. Think of it as like a puzzle piece, and think of the traditional culture as one piece or one puzzle set, and Western culture as another puzzle set. And in the integration response, the traditional puzzle set was willing to combine pieces and maybe even create a bigger puzzle set that has different pieces, and each piece kind of represents a value or belief for one culture. So, in a integrative response, the foreign culture is often viewed as a resource, and the traditional culture has low identity salience, meaning that the traditional culture views itself and its values as not noticeable nor important in the eyes of others. So in that case, it's willing to give up some of its values because it doesn't see its own values as important to others. So, positive interculturation effect is admiration, behavioral reactions, acceptance, integration, and synthesis, emphasized by a cultural learning mindset, so they are more willing to learn about the new culture and Western values being introduced to its own. It's conflicted by the need for firm answers and cultural consensus. Since you're having two cultures combined, and you're kind of dividing an answer for one problem into two ideologies, and that can create a little bit of conflict, and there isn't a firm answer to some questions being asked. And the next response is the exclusionary culture response. This happens when Western values and traditions are scorned, and the traditional culture isolates itself from Western individuals, and also isolates Western individuals from traditional events, gatherings, and even friend groups. So when you think back to the puzzle, you have the traditional culture and you have the Western culture puzzle set. The traditional culture puzzle set in this case wouldn't even bother removing some of its pieces or adding the Western values to its own. And as you can see in the picture below, the black chess piece is being isolated from the red chess pieces. So you can think of that as a Western individual in a exclusionary society. So in an exclusionary reaction, the foreign culture is viewed as a cultural threat, and the traditional culture has a high identity salience, so it views itself as and its values as noticeable and important. Therefore, it's not willing to give up or add anything else to its values. Emotional reactions: envy, fear, anger, disgust, and pity. Behavioral reactions: isolation, rejection, and aggression. And it's also, the traditional culture is emphasized by the need to defend the integrity and vitality of the heritage culture. And it's conflicted by the need for cognition, One key study relating to globalization and how it affects human behavior is the Norisakunke and Uchida of study of 2014 on hikikomori syndrome. And the aim of the study was to apply the theory of acculturation to explain the origins of hikikomori, a culture-bound syndrome found primarily in Japan, where a young Japanese student or person may lock themselves in their room and refuse to come out for years at a time. The disorder, also known as social isolation syndrome, has three characteristics: no motivation in school or work, no signs of other psychological disorders, and persistent social withdrawal for at least 6 months. The procedure of the study: Japanese university students were given a standardized test to determine whether the individual was high risk or low risk for hikikomori. After that, they were given another test to measure their attitudes about social harmony and conformity. This test looked at 3 levels: perception of current self, perception of ideal self, and perception of general Japanese society. And finally, they were given a third test to measure their sense of local identity: high on social harmony and conformity, and global identity, high on individual and achievement. So we can say Group A is low-risk students, Group B is high-risk students. Both groups agreed that social harmony and conformity were highly valued by the Japanese society. When assessing current self and ideal self, Group B ranked social harmony values much lower than Group A. Also, Group B scored lower than Group A on both local identity and global identity. Conclusion: it appears that local culture may alienate many Japanese youth who don't conform to cultural norms, but do not identify or know how to access globalized culture, and so they withdraw from society. To go back to what social harmony means, social harmony can be defined as a procedure of assessment articulate and encourage trust, admiration, peace, harmony, respect, generosity, and equity upon other people in any particular society, regardless of their religion, caste, gender, race, age, or occupation, and etc., among other aspects. To recap what this presentation has told you, what globalization is, it also means westernization. There are 2 reactions from the traditional culture to the westernization: exclusionary and integrative. Westernization spreads individualistic values, such as winning and competition. One key study was Norisakunke and Uchida, the study of hikikomori syndrome, or social isolation syndrome, and that was done in 2014. 2 key terms that you need to remember is identity salience and social harmony. Here is my works cited page.